Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos al cuarto Startup Grind Medellín. Para nosotros es un placer estar de nuevo con ustedes. Esperamos tenerlos más constantemente. Tenemos un público interesante. ¿Cuántos de ustedes son emprendedores? ¿Cuántos de ustedes son intraemprendedores? Tienen una compañía y son intraemprendedores. Unos poquitos. ¿Cuántos no hacen nada de eso? ¿Cuántos conocen el tema para el que venimos, que es de PR como tal? ¿Tienen dudas? Listo, hoy nos va a acompañar una persona muy interesante, es Conrad Egusa, que ya lleva varios años aquí en Medellín. Ha sido mentor y es mentor de 500 Startups, el nivel de mentorías, el Founders Institute, entre otros. Una persona de la que vamos a aprender montones. Ha escrito para VentureBeat, actualmente escribe para TechCrunch y Forbes como tal, y nos viene a contar sobre su startup que se llama Publicize. Démosle un gran aplauso a Conrad. Vamos a iniciar hoy. Bienvenido, Conrad. Y aquí. Ok. Bueno, entonces creo que arranquemos por cómo llegaste a Medellín.
Llegué hace como un poco más de 4 años. Yo pensé que voy a quedar como 2 meses y después voy a Brasil o voy a otro. Y después, como 2 meses, pensé que 2 meses más, 2 meses más. Y ahora es más que 4 años.
Excelente.
Sí.
¿Pero arrancó como paseo o venías como misión de negocios?
Pensé que voy a venir, voy a aprender un poco de español y después voy a... Yo quise viajar. Yo estaba viviendo muchos años en Nueva York y antes en Silicon Valley. Y siempre pensé que voy a regresar a Nueva York. Pero me acuerdo, yo estaba viajando a otros países y siempre extrañé mucho Medellín y yo estaba regresando.
Regresar como tal. ¿Qué es lo que más te ha hecho falta de esas culturas? Silicon Valley como tal.
Pues a mí, no sé, Silicon Valley es muy único y recomiendo a todo que, maybe I'll try in English.
Yeah.
I'd recommend everyone go and move there for several months, but I think you kind of keep it in you, and once you're there for half a year, wherever you live, whether in Colombia or Europe, you'll still kind of have that. Yeah, I think Silicon Valley is almost more of a mindset than a specific place, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Okay, so to everybody that doesn't know Conrad, who is Conrad?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
It's a tricky one.
Let me see. I am, I guess professionally, I'm the CEO of a company called Publicize. I have my partner Eddie here, and 2 members of the team, Xander and Christina, who are all stars, and you guys should all get to know them. And my background's mostly with media and startups. So I was a writer for a technology publication called VentureBeat for a long time, and I write sometimes for TechCrunch and for Forbes. And on the startup side, when I lived in Silicon Valley, I raised funding for my first startup there, and I've been involved with startups for a long time, and just seen kind of thousands of data points about like what works and what doesn't work. And I hope this can be of help, because I remember when I was first starting off, I would take this Caltrain to Stanford University, and you'd hear like the CEO of Google or someone talking, and they would talk about how like, wow, when you have 1,000 employees, this is like what you should think about, you know? And I would think like, damn, I'm like just starting off, like how, like I don't need to know about that. Like what I need to know is how do I get from, myself to 20 or 30 people, kind of how do I get there? And I hope, Publicize right now is about 40, close to about 40 employees. Our goal is to be one of the first $100 million startups that's based in Medellín. And hopefully I can tell you about some of the things that went well, and also things that I've screwed up a lot on, which these 3 team members can definitely attest to as well, for sure. But kind of, I think that's, to me, even right now, I think like a lot of the people that I look to when I talk to, I say like, who are the people I know who've grown companies from like 50 to like 500 people? Because that's kind of what I focus on. So hopefully I can share some of that.
Yeah. What was your first startup?
Yeah.
What kind was? What were you trying to do with that?
Yeah. So
The first one.
yeah, when I was in university, I was 19. I started. I had all these ideas for different companies, and like no one would join me on them. Even like my roommate, they like wanted nothing to do with it. And the first one was basically in the U.S. you have to buy books, and they're very expensive for school. And the idea was I would buy it online, and then as opposed to the bookstore, and I would sell it to friends and just keep the profit. So that was kind of this initial idea.
That's all stuff. So,
Yeah.
there was a clue. Your partners don't want to be with your startup.
Yeah.
But you was focused on the idea. That's a crappy decision, no?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, a lot of people, I just looked at risk differently. So most people, when they think that entrepreneurs take a lot of risk, I think I don't take any risk. I think I'm risk averse. So to me, people look at these and say they're risky, and I just never understood it because there's so much upside to starting these companies.
A lot of people say that the clue is perseverance.
Yeah.
But do you talk about risk? What do you think? What do you say to the new startup, to the new founder?
Yeah.
To look for what?
Yeah, I would say more just if you truly believe something, just do it, regardless of whether people agree with it or not, and just have that confidence in yourself, because it's always going to be there for sure. It's just it never goes away.
The feeling or the idea.
Well, the doubt. So people will always doubt, Yeah.
Yeah, and when you move to the next step, because friends and family are always going to be there for you.
Yeah.
And the idea is always good, but when you move to the next step, how you go there?
Yeah. So when I was 19, I had these ideas, but like back then you didn't have any like resource online about like how do you raise funding or like how do you build a startup. Like Facebook was just getting started, and there was this one class that my university taught, and I actually couldn't take it because I had another class. Like my other class was from 2 to 3 o'clock, and it was this honors class that I wasn't allowed to leave. And then the entrepreneurship class was from like 2:30 to 3:30, so I literally couldn't take it. But the teacher let me sit in, so I would leave my class early and just sit in on this class about entrepreneurship. And I remember there's this teacher, she was an advisor to Al Gore. She founded many successful companies. And I went to her and I said, this is gonna sound crazy, but I have this idea and I think it's gonna be $1 million company. And I'm thinking like she's gonna reject the idea, like she's gonna think I'm stupid, right? And she said, Conrad, and she kind of like put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, if you're gonna build a company, you might as well build a $100 million company and not a $1 million company, because it's gonna be hard either way. So like you better like set your goals a lot higher. And she introduced me a lot of people who were just really supportive and helped me out. Even though I was this like 19-year-old kid with like who was drinking too much Red Bull and like basically.
And your second one was your second startup?
Well, so the second idea was basically it was basically a platform for students. So the idea is most students, the biggest part of their identity is the university that they attend. But there's very little ways to connect to that. So it's essentially you log in with your Facebook profile, and it would basically a portal just for your university, kind of a social platform. And that was the second company. And si ustedes prefieren, puedo hablar en español. ¿Cómo ustedes prefieren? Okay. Well, so I'll tell you a story that sums up Silicon Valley pretty well. So at the time, we were getting like a lot of attention in the news, and a lot of people were like, were really helping me out. And this person says, "Hey, Conrad, this investor wants to speak to you. And I think they knew my reputation of like working really hard. And to me, this just cemented the fact that in Silicon Valley and around the world, reputation is everything, and the way people talk about you. So I get invited to this really nice restaurant at like the top, like the nicest building in like Silicon Valley. And I'm like riding with my friend's car because I'm so broke. I like have no money. I'm still in school, and I'm thinking it's gonna break down. And I go up, and I haven't even like slept that night because I had stayed up till like 5 to finish my PowerPoint about how to raise money, and I don't even, and at the end of the, so I go up there with my computer, and I'm so excited and nervous to speak to this investor and try to raise funding for the first time. And he says, "Hey, so what's your idea?" And I said, "It's this kind of next generation platform for students, and I think it's going to be pretty big." And he says, "Well, how much money are you looking to raise?" I said, "We're looking to raise roughly $100,000." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll fund it." And I hadn't even opened up my laptop. Literally, I just arrived 5 minutes ago, and I said, do you want to see the presentation? And he said, "Sure." He said, but I don't need to, because there are people that I trust who told me great things about you, and I really respect their opinion. And on that alone, I will invest in your company. And that just went to show me, like in Silicon Valley, how much, how do people talk about you when you're not there? And it's really funny. There have been a bunch of people in Publicize, we think about recruiting, and people refer their friends. And I'll get on the phone with a new team member, like a prospect, to join. And they start talking. I said, you don't even understand. You don't even need to say anything. You've already been hired just because how well other people spoke about you. And I always kind of think about that in the back of my mind about, like, even with our company right now, like we say we don't maximize for profit, we maximize for reputation. And just something that I think about a lot.
Okay. Networking, reputation,
Yeah.
connections, there's the key to success there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you get the funding.
Yeah.
What happened with that
Yeah.
idea?
So then I like screwed everything up really badly.
It has to be that way.
And I think in hindsight, I made a lot of mistakes for sure. Wow, I mean, such a unique experience where I was 19 and hiring like a CTO who was like 40 years old. And the whole team, and that's Silicon Valley for you, where really age doesn't matter at all. Just I think and one of the things I did was I lacked focus, and we were trying to build, as opposed to focusing on 20 different features, as opposed to focusing on one feature that people really love, we're focusing on 20, and not honing in at all. I think now there's this great movement of kind of lean startup on customer development, about speaking to clients, and I didn't do that as well. And in hindsight, and actually Xander's been huge. Xander runs our product now, and he does such a better job than I was doing with Publicize, because I was making a lot of those same mistakes as well. And it's really interesting because I find most people think about that your idea is going to make you successful, but it really is about like you as an individual. And you'll find that you hit these barriers that keep holding you back. And it's like only till you get it past that personally, then like the idea and the company can grow. And so I just think it's interesting to think about it like that.
Yeah, and I think the other key to success is the co-founders and the people that get you focused on the idea, and your team.
Absolutely.
Because your team moves you forward.
Yeah.
I think it's time to came back to Medellín. So what happened when you create here? What was your first idea in Medellín?
Yeah. So the first company that I started here was called Espacio. Eddie's the co-founder, and basically the idea was, we were also building this marketing company, and we just felt like, hey, why isn't there a co-working space? There's a growing tech scene kind of that a popular location that can serve as basically a center as well, and we're thinking about potential locations. It all came together basically when the idea came. I don't know if Eddie, I don't remember the exact one, but it was something like from the idea to the launch date was something like 6 weeks. Because once the idea, I don't know, the thing is, usually once I have an idea, like I get moving on it really quickly. So to figure out whether I like it or not. And in this case, for this, we actually needed to raise some funding for it. And so the very first thing I did was I spoke to 2 people who agreed to commit some funding, and that kind of kickstarted it, that we had to kind of push forward with it. And we found this location that we liked. It's actually the same building where we are now, in front of Hooters, and we launched this co-working space. And I think the 3 goals were actually the same goals that we have right now, which is help advance Medellín as kind of a center of innovation, and really be the best place to start new businesses. So that was Espacio.
Yeah. How did you manage to get Espacio on TechCrunch?
Yeah, and something to keep in mind. Most people, when you look at companies, like you think that they're much bigger than they actually are. Like the reality of what Espacio was it was just Eddie and I. Actually, at the end, the investors decided not to invest, I remember emailing like .co and Founder Institute and saying like, hey, can we mention that you're like partners with us when we contact the media? And they're like, yeah. And so, if you'd read all the media, you'd think like, wow, Espacio is this huge thing. When it was really just Eddie and myself and like credit cards and just like, just hoping as much as possible that things will work out. And it was super challenging and a lot of, I think some gray hairs for sure.
Yeah, you were the first co-working space in Medellin.
Yeah.
Today there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
But you start this new era of sharing space, but not kind of offices and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But my question with something you just say is, every startup sells that is bigger.
Yeah.
You are the best application of Colombia.
Yeah.
You have the best accelerator. You are the best one,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of smoke there.
Yeah.
That is good stuff. How do you look that from 500 startups? When you get there,
Yeah.
what is your smoke? Or these big companies, these big startups also have that smoke?
I mean, that's a good question. I guess I think it really depends on like the individual situation. Also because Eddie and I, we weren't looking to raise funding after that. So, you know what? That's a really good question. And I guess because we weren't looking to raise funding, I think it's probably mostly about like knowing the industry and kind of knowing the metrics as well as possible. So, yeah, I'd probably focus on those 2 things.
Okay. But what do you say to the entrepreneurs when you are a mentor in 500 startups? Do you tell them to stop this kind of stop thinking that
absolutely.
they are bigger and they're the best one? Because there is the impression that the people say this idea is crazy new.
Yeah.
Nobody has think about that.
Yeah.
So what do you tell the entrepreneur?
Yeah. So the very first thing I say is I said every entrepreneur that I talk to, for the first 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to be telling me about how amazing things are. And then right after that, you're going to start telling me about how really terrible things are. And it's true in all companies, right? All companies have huge challenges. So I just say, if my goal is to help as much as possible. So like, just tell me what you really need, like what keeps you up at night. And everyone has that. And it's comforting talking to friends who were invested or advised early on to Uber. And they would always tell me, Conrad, like people think Uber is this super dominant business, but like when they were first starting off, and probably even today, like it's just like a nightmare in there, Like everything, like you feel the company's gonna shut down. So usually, what I say is my goal is to help. So just be kind of open and honest about it as much as possible.
But with the media,
Yeah.
If I want to be in TechCrunch, I have to have big numbers, not just the regular ones
Yeah.
of the truly that I have.
Yeah.
If my apps doesn't it only has 1,000
Yeah.
downloads,
For sure.
it's not amazing. But if I have 1 million downloads, it became more amazing.
Yeah.
So I know that people fake the statistics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
a good practice.
well,
Bad
no,
practice is
definitely never anything kind of fake or anything you wouldn't feel right doing. To me, the story that you pitch everyone should always be kind of the big mission of the company. So with Eddie and I, we never thought like, hey, our goal is to rent office space. That was never our goal with co-working. Our goal was really like, how do we turn Medellín into the Silicon Valley of Latin America? And because of that, that became this kind of interesting story. So for anyone, I would just say like, focus on what that big mission is. Because even when TechCrunch was covering us, I remember like the paint in our, I don't know if you came to our opening party.
Yeah.
The paint wasn't even dry. Like we literally had to take several of our team members and ask them to stand in certain locations at the party and not move, because the paint otherwise, people would have gotten it on their clothing. So, and I can go, I can go on and on about horror stories. It's funny because every time that people congratulate us on TechCrunch or these big news publications, we're always the events where we had like the most nightmare experience ever. And I'll tell you one. So when Publicize first launched, we got on TechCrunch and Entrepreneur Magazine, a bunch of these other publications. And Publicize at that time, we just moved to people being able to pay via credit card with the system. And at the time, we used this old system that I'd used like for way back in the day, where back in the day they'd said like, well, how much money do you expect to make with your credit card processor? And I said something like, well, we expect maybe like $40 or $50 a day. And way back in the day. So then we start using it for Publicize, and we get on TechCrunch, and we get maybe like $15,000, $20,000 paid through our. And the thing about the credit card processor is normally that money that's paid reaches your bank account like 4 days later. And Eddie and I, we literally just gone from like 5. We had like 5 people, and we just went to we had like 4 people. We just hired more people to get to 10. And we were month to month. Like we didn't have money to pay people. I was just paying out of, as we were growing. And so we're checking our bank account, and the money from the credit card isn't going to our bank account. So I'm like, what is going on here? The credit card processor. So I called the company, and they said, you know what? We were expecting you to get $50 every day. But you guys just got like, 15 grand. It's like, so here's what we have to do, because the credit card processor is liable for that. So what they said is we're gonna have to hold it in an account for 6 months while we wait to make, because the reason is if somebody requests a refund, then the credit card processor is liable, so up to 6 months. So they said we're gonna have to hold it for 6 months, then after 6 months you can get your money back. But keep in mind at this time, we cannot, more people are making payments, which are then being held for 6 months, so we can't access any money. We have to make payroll in like 2 weeks for this team that we just took on, and we're growing really quickly, so it'd be very hard to make payment. And the worst part about it is literally every single day on Facebook or phone call, someone's calling and saying, Conrad, Eddie, congrats. You guys got on TechCrunch. You guys are killing it. You hear that all the time. So I remember I literally locked myself up into a room. I said, Eddie, we have to find a new payment processor now because people want to pay for this and we need the money. We need to find a way to get this $20,000 out as much as possible. And we have to find a way to pay people in 2 weeks. And it's just funny because from like the outside, again, you get
everything
all this
is
congrats.
good.
Yeah,
everything is good. Just for the people that doesn't know what Publicize is, so you have mentioned that, but we haven't been there yet. So what is Publicize?
So the idea for Publicize was basically in the United States, when people want to get on the Wall Street Journal, they usually pay $10,000 a month and a required 6-month engagement. So $60,000 cost, and that prices out most startups. So the idea was, could we create basically a startup PR service, and as low as $400 a month, and month to month, and up to 100% money back guarantee. So kind of a really friendly startup approach. And that's what we launched. And then as we started growing, we got like enterprise clients, and now we have clients like Microsoft and some bigger companies that just request more things. But I think the long-term goal of Publicize, which Xander is a huge part of, is that I think everyone in the world wants two things. They want they want security, and that's usually from finances, like having money. And the second is they want recognition, and that's usually from media. But like most people look at media as this black box. So we want to create basically a free platform that anyone can use to essentially approach the media and kind of get recognition as well. So ultimately, I think as we grow, the goal is we'll always have the Microsofts, a lot of big companies working with us, but there's also going to be this free component that anyone can use.
How many times the idea has changed or pivot?
I would say for this, it's actually stayed pretty constant. I would say that there have been a lot of iterations, but I'd say kind of that goal of how do we make this more accessible. I think we've had that kind of true north there, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to came back to the story, you create Spacio.
Yeah.
Spacio was a co-working.
Yeah.
There was also a landing for people that came from the States or some other countries and work there.
Yeah.
You have a lot there. They start the competition and what happens with Spacio? Why Spacio collapse or what was the
Well, I think I think two things. The first was that one of the things we realized really early on was that almost that there are basically there are many types of kind of currencies, and one being money, and other being like reputation and all these things. And I think one of the things a co-working space does, and also even media publications, is that provides, it was great becoming a leader in the community, and Espacio provided that platform. But like as a business model, it was like it wasn't going to work very well, and the opportunity cost was growing. So one of the things that happened was Publicize started to take off, and it just continued. When we're thinking, hey, we can deal with these clients there's this huge demand, or spend time on this co-working, it didn't make a lot of sense. So the idea with the Espacio is basically we're going to keep the same mission, but we're going to move. The goal is basically to move to an incubator model where it basically encompasses Publicize and now about 4 news publications we purchased. And we're actually about to move into a bigger space in the same building. And we still want to kind of host events and be a center, but co-working, I think too, I didn't get like I didn't get a ton of passion out of it either. Yeah.
And what was the kind of entrepreneurs you get there? What technologies you see? What things do you think there was missing?
Yeah.
The people that came to the co-working space.
Yeah. I mean, the challenge with co-working space, and you can think about it for your own businesses, is like you ideally want the type of company that as the client grows, like you grow, right? Like those. But the thing with co-working is the client grows, they leave the co-working space.
Yep.
It made it really hard, like the type of company. So it was probably more like individual or 1 or 2 person companies that were working out of there.
Okay, and you say that Medellín was a great center, and you want to help to create a new entrepreneur stuff in Medellín. How was that?
Yeah.
What happened? What's your connection with Medellín?
Yeah.
How do you see us?
I mean, I still think that's still to me the biggest goal of the company, and the idea being, like, I guess the way I look at it is, if you want to make the biggest impact, the best way to do that is to build this enormous company where it can serve a couple of things. Some members will eventually leave and start their own companies. Others, it'll serve as a great example for people starting out. That it really can be done, because most people that I know who start companies move to Silicon Valley and New York, and we have the opportunity that we don't necessarily need to do that. I guess I just look at it as kind of providing as much opportunity as we can.
But how do you see the ecosystem? It's mature already, or we have to do more? How do you feel it?
I think that we're still on like the first wave, and yes, some of the companies that I was most bullish on didn't, didn't kind of reach the next level of funding, which I think happens with a lot of ecosystems. So yeah, there still is kind of a ways to go for sure.
A lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think absolutely. But I think to me the biggest challenge that Medellín had was that most of the senior entrepreneurs that I know in Silicon Valley and New York want to build companies, and that has a kind of a compound effect. And to me in Medellín, most of the senior members wanted to like invest, and so because of that, you take the most talented pool of people out of kind of the company building game, and I think that's that's the biggest part of a startup ecosystem is how many kind of successful companies do you have.
Yeah, that's the experience for the founder.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the founder is just drop out from the school,
Yeah.
from the college, or something like that, they don't have experience to create this big company. They
Yeah.
just have an idea and a lot of passion.
For sure.
But the senior and that kind of stuff is
Yeah.
looking for another stuff.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't failed with my first company. And the thing is, it was only after I failed that I could like take the next step. And I found a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe the first company like doesn't work out after a few years, but then they move on to like look and invest in companies. But that's like the prime point where they should be building companies. If that makes sense.
And the other question is bootstrapping or go to funding or go to a government program.
Yeah.
What do you recommend? Wow. What do you think is the go there?
Yeah, I mean, I think businesses ultimately, like the purpose of it is to create a profit in some ways, whether to like society or kind of financial profit. So, and I like the idea of bootstrapping in that it can kind of help you focus on like your goals to reach profitability, as opposed to like a lot of times when people raise money, they forget about that. And the whole game becomes how do you raise more money, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I know certain businesses require funding, and that's really important. But I say, however possible, like, because we've actually had a lot of options with Publicize right now about like, hey, we're starting like Bessemer Ventures. A lot of venture capital firms send these emails out like, we should have a call, like, because it'd be great if when you guys are raising funding, we have this relationship. And the thing is, I almost look at raising funding as like an easy way out, because it's really easy when you have money to cover up these problems, as opposed to when you have to figure it out, you can make those decisions really quickly.
Okay.
So yeah.
Moving to the mentorship and this part of the interview. So, what makes a great story?
Yeah.
What I have a new startup. I want to sell my startup to the press. I want to go there and tell my story.
Yeah.
What makes a good one?
Yeah. So what I like to tell people is, do you know when you guys are in the gym or you're about to go to bed and like you're daydreaming about your company and it's going to be like 100, 200 people working for you, right? You're going to change the world. Like whatever vision you see there, that's what you should really highlight, whether it's to the media, whether it's to partners, etc. And to me, that's not really like, that's not like trying to deceive someone, because I really believe that. I really believe Publicize will become $100 million company, and all these things that we're doing. I would just focus on kind of that big mission that you're thinking about.
Okay, aim high and go for it, and tell that ambition.
Absolutely, but the thing is, I found most people do aim. They already are thinking high. They just don't like to talk about it.
Okay.
They're kind of like, oh, well, I want to start this company. It'll be small because I won't be embarrassed if I just say something small. But they have that big idea. That's just kind of
And keep from himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so your recommendation is go out and tell why and how you want to change the world.
Absolutely.
With this idea that by crazy that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The other thing is how do I approach to the media?
Yeah.
How do I get to the attention?
Yeah, I would say to me the best way is, I still recommend email over other channels. I would avoid phone, although it's more normal in South America, I think, as opposed to for international media. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of kind of example templates that I'm happy to send over to maybe share with you if you want about like kind of ways you could frame it. But I think two things to keep in mind are the big mission and also mentioning social proof about yourself. So most people, if you email the media and say something like, I'm a bootstrap entrepreneur, like there are 100 million other bootstrap entrepreneurs, and that's not that interesting. But if you say something like, I'm the director of Startup Grind, well, that kind of makes you stand out. So any one or two things you could do, I think is really important.
Okay, and the connections.
Uh-huh.
Go to these kind of events, be in the networking.
Yeah.
Create these kind of connections that move you forward.
Yeah.
The reputation that you say.
For sure. I mean, I think connections are really important, but I think that in some ways they're overrated because a lot of times, like, I was in Entrepreneur Magazine last year and people said, oh, you must have known that writer so well. And I thought like, no, I just sent him an email. And that happens in most cases. So like, most people have this block, like if I don't know this person, I can't contact them. And I think it's important to kind of get that out of their mind.
Okay. The other stuff is when I find that my idea is a crappy one and I need to change. I need to go away for it. What is the tricky stuff that says, okay, stop?
Yeah. I think the first thing is a mistake I used to make a lot is, and I see a lot of founders do this, is they're like, I have this great idea. And then you tell it to your friend and your friend's like, it's amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, my friend's brilliant. He thinks my idea is really good. And then you tell your idea and your friend, another person's like, I just don't really like it. And you're like, oh, this guy's so stupid. What does he know about anything, right? So it just kind of reaffirms your idea. And you find like very few people will ever give you criticism about anything. And so one of the things I try to do is seek negative feedback. So say like, I'll say like, how do you like this idea? And they're like, I love it. And I'm like, well, I don't really care about that. Like, tell me what you don't like about it. Like, that's all I care about. Because that's probably going to be more of the truth coming out. I think the other thing too is, ideally, you're going to be building a product for yourself. So that's kind of your true north. So like, I know, like even where we're going with Publicize, I know we're building something that I would want to use. So like, it's very likely 10 other people would likely use it. Suppose if I was building something for a different market that I wouldn't use, like I'm kind of just guessing about what people would like. So I think it's kind of important to keep that in mind.
Be involved. Okay. What book do you recommend us to read?
Yeah, there's so many. I would say, let me see, Hard Things About Hard Things is fantastic. I'd say like 0 to 1 is just a classic. Those would probably be the first two. Although one of the things I used to always do, I can't really do it here, because in bookstores, they like have the cover here. But in the US, I would always go to Barnes & Noble's and I would literally read every single book I could find and just grab a coffee there. And so there's so much great literature. If someone were to ask me what's the key to success, I would say reading. If there's gonna be one key to success, I would say reading. So I would, I think any bookstore you go to, you'll find like just so many great resources. I would say one thing that comes to mind though is, and something I think about a lot, like I probably, like any management book you can find, like I probably have like broken every rule in that book like multiple times. And, but I've always felt that if you like really care about the people that you're working with, and what you're doing, like in a lot of ways, a lot of that other stuff is less important. But I think the reverse is also true. Like you could find someone from business school who knows like every single thing about management, right? But like if he doesn't really care about his team, then like that people see that. It's really interesting, even like the word like entrepreneur, because the way I look at Publicize is like, I've never considered my company, or I've never considered Eddie in my companies. I just look at it as like over time, we're going to bring in more talented people, and more equity will be, like as they earn and work hard, they'll receive more equity. So I do look at every member of the team as entrepreneurs. So to me, it's either like, either you join a company and you kind of receive equity, or either you start a company and like you slowly give more and more equity away as kind of the team grows. Yeah, I just think it's just about like having ideas and like pursuing them basically as much as you can.
Okay, one entrepreneur to follow?
I mean, probably like the star right now is Elon Musk, and just how ambitious he is, and he's a good example of like whatever he gets, he's still thinking about like kind of making an impact, and so yeah, I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, I think he's such a great example. He's such a great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the one that we don't need to listen, one entrepreneur
to
to get
avoid.
to avoid, yeah, to get away.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Donald Trump fan, and Peter Thiel was supporting him for sure, but he still has some great ideas. Peter Thiel has some great ideas, but I know. Let me see, people to avoid. That's a really good question. Let me see.
Or methodologies or ideas to avoid.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. I think the methodologies are really important. I just think the biggest thing is like focus on something that you would do whether or not you were getting paid for it. And you hear that a lot, but it's kind of, I think about it right now, even when I was like 19 years old, what I would do on like a Saturday, and I'm kind of nerdy about this stuff, but I'd like go to a Barnes and Noble's or I'd go to a cafe and I'd like read a book and I would just like love it, and I'd like work on these ideas that I love. And then like I thought about it and like, then like and then I think about it like today where like the company's a lot bigger, But like, what did I do on Saturday? Like I went to Crepes and Waffles. They have this amazing waffle with Nutella. and I was like reading a book and like working on these ideas that I love, So I would say like whatever like pushes you to do that, whatever the idea is, whether it's to make money or whether it's, something else.
Go for it.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Conrad, for being with us. This was, I think, a great conversation.
Yeah.
I think it was to be in Spanish, but it was good to have you here. So
muchas gracias por todo, guys. Thanks so much. Cheers. Cheers, guys.